Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. And Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Oh, very good. Today we'd like to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. I think he's the president-elect, and he's talking about the CIA. Well, you know, I think most people know about where I stand on Donald Trump. When he's right, I try to brag about it. When he's wrong, I try to point out it's not going the wrong way. But I don't think there's any doubt about my criticism of the CIA, because I don't think too much of them, because they've gotten us into so much trouble. The evidence is so overwhelming that they've been involved in many assassinations, not only, the association and the confirmation by many now of the CIA being involved in the Kennedy assassination, maybe both Kennedys, for all we know. And then the CIA, of course, is so secretive. Even as a member of Congress, I couldn't find out, what was really going on. And sometimes they don't even know what's going on. So Trump comes along and says something good. He says, we need to look into it. We need to shrink it. We need to know what they're doing. And of course, he was happy that, that Assange was trying to straighten out some of these things, and what the CIA and the FBI would say about, it's all the Russians' fault, it's all the Russians' fault. So that's an interesting alliance too. But the big issue here is reform and change in the CIA, and it's meeting a great resistance no matter how many failures it's had, whether it's the association with the Kennedy and even Martin Luther King's assassination. But I was really fascinated the other day. It was a liberal TV station was rehashing this thing about the failure of the CIA on leading up to the war in Iraq. Of course they failed. You don't know. And Trump has accused the CIA as being political. Yeah, maybe. And so they might have been very political, at the time. They had to feed the information in there to support the war. And Trump makes the point. They didn't even know about it. Now, the liberals were talking about it, and they didn't deny it. They didn't argue and say, yeah, that's true. They've messed up, but we've cleaned up our act, and you can trust us now. And that was defending the CIA. But we do have this ongoing, and hopefully some good will come of it, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Who would have thought that the left would now be saying, Trump's a terrible guy because he doesn't even believe the CIA?
Yeah, that's right. The old left was a little bit better than the new left.
Exactly. But, the idea, and I think it's pretty well known that, there have been aspects or parts of the CIA that have been in open warfare against Trump through the campaign. Right. So many anonymous leaks from intelligence officials, one way or the other. So it's not, knowing how Trump seems to operate, I don't think it's a surprise that he's going to look to the intelligence community for reform. And he's also surrounded himself very closely with military types, military officers. And there's an ongoing tension between Pentagon intelligence gathering and analysis and what the CIA does. We saw that in Syria, where the CIA troops were fighting the Pentagon troops on the ground. So I think there's nothing unusual. I think we can see what side he's taking on it, but that's only part of the story.
Right, and hopefully he can get to the bottom of this. There are 17 different agencies, and they're supposed to, be coordinating, but they're bureaucratic and they're political and they're inept and they have all these problems, and the deep state is involved, and what are their political beliefs? Those sometimes who are working with the deep state and taking their orders, they could be very pro-war. Matter of fact, they probably are very pro-war because they always seem to be involved. And they're very much pro-involvement in other elections. That's what really gets to me, that, oh my goodness, I hope we have a quote. I think McCain talks about getting involved in election. But here we have, throwing up their hands. Isn't this horrible about the Russians might have gotten involved, which I don't believe. I don't think they have the evidence. But if we looked at ourselves and involvement, the total number of people involved, we could find out that we don't do a very good job. And I'm just hoping that something good will come in this investigation. But also look at Trump as a businessman and somebody who knows how to get hold of things and get control. And since I don't even like the principle of the CIA, I don't think they give us information. They hide information from us, and they mislead us. So that's why I don't have high hopes for this. So we'll have to see.
And actually, if we have the third clip we can put up, it's the McCain quote. And, you know, McCain is now, as we speak, I think, holding hearings in the Senate on Russia's hacking our elections. And here's what he said in his opening statement. Every American should be alarmed by Russia's attacks on our nation. There is no national security interest more vital to the United States of America than the ability to hold free and fair elections without foreign interference.
What a joke that is. But every American should be alarmed. He made an assumption, guilty as charged, no question about it. You know, I think, you know, this adamant decision that they know exactly what it is. And I think the greatest threat is to the American people. You know, the line that went on to get us in the Iraq War, who did it hurt? You know, it didn't help the Iraqi people. It was supposedly helping. It didn't help the American people. It didn't help our soldiers that died. I mean, it was just a calamity. So this whole thing that we have to worry about this, he needs to worry about the American people. But they're claiming, of course, that if we didn't have the CIA, we wouldn't know what's going on in the world and we wouldn't know which governments to support. And at the same time, we're the ones that's doing the intervening. You know, what is it, since World War II, there's even just up to the turn of the century, there were 81 times we knew, people know we were involved in elections. We were involved in 50 assassinations. And you hear, oh, we're very disturbed. The American people should wake up. I think we should wake up. Yes, if they did and got involved. But right now there's been, and we talked about this, I think, yesterday, some of the experts are saying there's no way that this could be, you know, orchestrated by the Russian government. So, but nevertheless, inconsistencies and inconsistency with the way they present the case from the far left. I think a lot of this stuff, when it comes to the election and what the CIA and is doing, is just, you know, the left are just a bunch of crybabies right now. Do you think they're on principle opposed to any of this? No, as long as that, and I think we have another quote that may show what they're really thinking.
Yeah. But, you know, the thing about the McCain hearing today, he brought in the top leaders of the CIA, the Office of National Intelligence. It is an example of exactly how these things are politicized. He has a foregone conclusion before he held this hearing, which is that the Russians attacked. He even said attack the U.S. And so he trots out the CIA, he trots out the intelligence community to back up a conclusion that he had already made. That's called politicization and using it in a politicized way. And the other part that's fun is he talks about how, you know, how dare they interfere. Well, he's the one who went to Ukraine and actually participated in the overthrow of an elected government. He did the same thing. He went into Syria and met with a bunch of terrorists because he wanted to overthrow that government. So talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Oh, yeah.
What a pity, you know. So they'll have these hearings, and Trump has a goal. Somebody else had a goal similar to this after World War II, and that was Truman, and that's why he created the CIA to sort all this out. But, you know, it's more complex than it seems to be. I think, you know, Trump will have problems, you know, achieving this just because there's so many obstacles, and he won't know who really represents the CIA unless he is well attuned to the deep state, because the real orders and assassinations, that's not out in the open. I'm sure there's no CIA record of when they said, well, we're going to take this guy out. Every once in a while they did. I mean, we did know what exactly their plans were to get Saddam Hussein. That was just stupid policy, thinking that they were going to remake the Middle East. They remade the Middle East in a very destructive manner, doing something we shouldn't have been involved in. But the CIA is always participating in these kind of things.
And there is a good quote, actually, from Chuck Schumer. It was the first clip that we had. And I think Schumer is plugged in pretty well to the deep state. And here's what he said about Trump and the CIA. Let me tell you, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. That is very chilling if you think that. That's a threat against Donald Trump for trying to even do any reform.
Yeah, we always complain about these guys telling lies, but this is not a lie. I think he's speaking the truth there, that they better watch out. And I think Trump knows about it. That's why he has private security. And why should they trust the CIA? But that's un-American. Just because the evidence says that, that you can't trust them, and maybe the philosophy is that they shouldn't even exist, and they haven't produced anything good. They haven't warned us about anything. They didn't do a very good job. They had over $40 billion in intelligence gathering before 9/11, and on the investigations, it turned out they had a lot of evidence floating around. They didn't do anything about it. Is it total ineptness? Or I think there's a lot of ineptness because they're bureaucratic. There's so many different agencies, and the CIA's, not really working with the FBI. So Trump has a good goal in his mind. The big question is, what's he going to accomplish? And is he really, I doubt very much if he has our position that some of this activity shouldn't even exist. So I think if he got control of it, he would use it the way he wants to use it. And he's not bashful about using power. And he's not bashful about saying that foreign activity should be very, very secretive. And I don't consider him a libertarian on civil liberties. No. So, and just look at his appointments. I mean, the Attorney General and also Pompeo's appointments, CIA. These guys don't have any qualifications for protecting the American people. They're protecting privacy for the executive branch and the deep state. The biggest thing I think that I have in my mind to figure out is the relationship of the deep state to Trump. Yeah. Most people on our side, libertarians and conservatives say, well, it's Trump against the deep state, Trump against the deep state. I told you the other day, I said, I started off with saying elections are just, ceremonies to entertain the people. And when I saw first that Trump said, we're not going to, why prosecute poor old Hillary? She's had enough problem. Just leave her alone. We don't want to put her in prison. And then the next thing is Hillary and Bill. Sure, we're going to join in. I mean, that was a lot of fun we had there, but now we're best of buddies. And so that makes you wonder. I don't believe that is forgiveness and capitulation as much as they're too often on the same page. But that's so much conspiracy, nobody's going to believe that stuff.
Well, we were talking beforehand, and this is the same with foreign policy. It's, Trump may want to reorganize the intelligence community. He may want to even shrink it, they say. They say he may even get rid of the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which was formed on top of the other agencies that didn't work together.
To bring them together.
But, it is the policy, not the structure, that's important. And you talked about Pompeo. This is a guy who is in favor of regime change, which Trump on December 1st explicitly opposed. He says it's not going to be our business anymore. But here's Pompeo on Iran. Called on Congress to, quote, change Iranian behavior and ultimately the regime. Here's Pompeo on Syria. We want regime change in Syria. It's in the U.S. national interest to act militarily against Syria. Yeah. So if he really means reform...
And put that in context of history, it sounds like Eisenhower, which nobody really realizes, but Eisenhower was very engaged. If they read the book, The Brothers, by Kinzer, they find out the Dulles brothers, Secretary of State, and the CIA leader there, Allen Dulles, that this was all part of it. And just look how much we've suffered all these years, and they're still conspiring to overthrow a government in Iran. So they don't seem to ever learn, sorting it out on whether they're just plain stupid or they have an ulterior motives and just are totally inept. But they don't even seem to accomplish what they think they're supposed to be doing. We're remaking the Middle East. What are they talking about? Yeah, they destroyed how many countries in the Middle East? And I understand that war in Afghanistan isn't about to close down shop. I think that might even continue after Obama leaves office.
The good war.
Yeah, that's a good war. That's why they keep it going. Yeah. It's good for whom. It's good for the military-industrial complex.
But, you know, it's as you say, it's not about reorganizing the deck chairs. That's what they did already with the Department of Homeland Security and all this stuff. But it's about the policies, and that's at the center of it all.
I think that is the key to it. You know, whether it's the CIA operations or our military operation, it's the policy that our country follows in foreign affairs. You know, we have not taken the advice of the founders and said, stay out of the entangling alliances, stay out of Europe in particular. Don't get involved in internal affairs of other nations. And that's all we ever do. And they figure, well, we're doing it in protecting, it's always, well, we send kids over there to fight and die for our freedoms and our Constitution in unconstitutional wars. So they argue the case that we have to do this for national security interests. I mean, just think of all this activity. Why, the American people ever ask, why do we have to decide exactly who runs Ukraine? Yeah. You know, and yet they get bombarded with the propaganda that a lot of people now, especially if they lean Democrat, oh, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. It's every bit as bad as the Cold War, and therefore they're ready to. And we're putting more weaponries in Eastern Europe. They didn't talk about that much in the last couple of weeks because they talk about the election and distracted from our military buildup. Then they wonder why the Russians react to this. You know, it doesn't make much sense.
I think thousands of special forces troops are in Lithuania, literally on the border with Russia. Can you imagine how they would react here in the U.S. if thousands of Russians were on the border in Mexico? I
was wondering also that, you know, in international waters in the Gulf of Mexico, anybody can come in there. But you think if China put their Navy in the Gulf of Mexico, we wouldn't have something to say about it? Yeah, we're dictating everything that's going on in the South China Sea. But, you know, a lot of people... you know, I think our viewers are pretty much attuned, and at least they're open-minded and skeptical and like to hear, you know, a take on the news and what's happening in a little different fashion than what they get on the TV and what they get spoon-fed, and that's good. But if there are some skeptics viewing the program, you know, I would suggest that there's a lot of information out there. And you and I even mentioned already the one book that we thought was very important was The Brothers, and that was written by Kinzer. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how the two Dulleses got involved way back during the Eisenhower era, right after World War II, and involved with Korea and all these things. But there are some other ones. There was one by Russ Baker that I found fascinating, and that was the family of secrets. Mm-hmm. This goes all the way back and talks about even Prescott Bush and George Bush Sr. and George W. Bush, and shows all the intrigues going on. But the real person they talked about, as well as in the book written by David Talbot, was Devil's Chessboard. Mm-hmm. And the real person, the individual they hone in on is Allen Dulles. You know, the first leader, you know, CIA director. And boy, if somebody can read that and just blow it off and say, this is a bunch of nutty stuff, they can do something easier. But the documentation, and matter of fact, the people have come around to this. You know, they give these statistics out about, you know, trusting the Warren Commission on Kennedy.
Yeah.
I remember when that report came out, and they were standing up there and talking about it, and people said, well, maybe this. But now we had every member of Congress vote to open up, you know, the ability of the people who lost loved ones on 9/11, that they can sue Saudi government. So there were foreign governments involved. Yeah. And, of course, our internationalists here, the neocons, got hysterical over the whole thing. So the information is out there, and I would just encourage people to go look for it and then make up their own minds about it.
Well, I certainly hope that he does reorganize and he takes into account the policy being primary, and maybe takes a look at the U.S. covert actions.
Yeah. I think that is very important to at least look at it and get information. The more information, the better. It helps the American people decide what we should do. And I can draw an analogy to the Federal Reserve. I've worked for a good many years on auditing the Fed. And sometimes people will write in, "You're not doing this right. You got to abolish the Fed." Of course, we have to abolish the Fed. But I tell you what, one major step of auditing Fed, because we need to reform and look at it and see who they're bailing out. This this is very, very important. The same way on the CIA. I think, you know, what Trump is doing is good. I think it's fine and dandy, since we're very sympathetic to people like Assange and Ed Snowden for telling us the truth. That's what we want. It is controversial. They put their lives on the line. They get charged with all kinds of things and threat. They lose their citizenship and all these kind of things that go on because they tell us the truth. And that, to me, is a tragedy. So we're going to continue to do our very best to look at these issues, and we're hoping for the best that when Trump gets serious about this, as soon as he's sworn in, that a lot of good will come of it. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because right now I think it's a mess. I think the CIA and the secrecy of our government has caused so much trouble, and we ought to have it much more open, and we have to have a much greater concern about not protecting national interests and doing all this stuff. We have to protect the domestic interest, which is personal liberty and privacy of the American citizen, defend the Fourth Amendment. That's what we really need today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and please come back soon.